Hello everyone, it's Łukasz Malinowski, the Internet of Things advisor and trainer. Today, I will talk about very important topic, the security of Internet of Things and the role of Internet of Things in security posture of multiple systems, which is often overlooked, but that's a huge gain of the IoT technology itself. So please say hi in chat so I know that at least one person is listening, because it's always nice to have that kind of feedback. And we will start this discussion. Before going into the topic, I need to admit that uh, once I was asked to speak about security in Internet of Things in the conference, and my first thought was about all of the issues that we need to solve when we deploy some IoT solution. And that is a mindset that is very typical, and as I said, it happens to myself as well. That we focus on all of the issues that we might encounter, not on the actually benefits of leveraging Internet of Things technology. Okay, so having said that, let's start the timer and start with our presentation. So as I said, that's the typical approach, that the Internet of Things introduce cybersecurity challenges. And the question that I would like to state and try to answer today is how we could leverage Internet of Things technologies actually to counter threats, not only to open some doors for attackers to compromise our system. But before we start, let's state the key security considerations. And the fact is that the Internet of Things introduces the widest attack surface in the history of computers. That's the fact, and we need to acknowledge it, and we need to find a way how to work around it to deploy secure Internet of Things infrastructure and to leverage that infrastructure to provide our goals. Let's start with answering the question. So, what is the attack surface? So, the attack surface, in a nutshell, are all the points that attackers could use to enter into our system, to extract data from our system, to impact the way that both the devices and backend and applications behave. So, speaking about Internet of Things, the attack surface looks more or less like this. And as you can see, this is a huge list. And the reason for that is that Internet of Things by itself got various aspects that normally are kind of disconnected, right? So Internet of Things focus on the physical side of world. So we've got devices with sensors, we've got firmware running on those devices, we've got some backend applications, we've got network in between, right? So all of those aspects normally are a bit disconnected, and we need to focus on securing only every single one of them. But when we introduce the Internet of Things solution, all of a sudden we are responsible for providing the end-to-end security that touches on all of those surfaces. And I believe that's the reason why people think about Internet of Things as being very insecure, because it is pretty demanding task to make the whole system secure, because all of those layers. Let's go very quickly through all of them, starting with the communication channels. So IoT devices communicate with each other and communicate with backend systems using various protocols and technologies like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, LP1, Cellular, whatever. And the thing is that every single protocol introduces very unique security challenges. So when we design and deploy IoT solution, we need to take into consideration all of those challenges introduced by every protocol we've got in our system. Going further, we've got firmware and software. And as you all know, the security in software is a topic on its own, right? So every application got bugs. Those bugs can be used to make this application do things it was not designed to do. The same is true for IoT. We've got software both on the backend side, we've got applications, and we've got a firmware, which is basically software running on small constrained devices. And when we deploy IoT solution, we need to ensure that both the firmware and software are safe enough to not uh, ex- to not provide any entry points for attackers. Um, Speaking about entry points, our end users needs to have some way to interact with devices than their own, right? They need to have some way to set up the device, for instance, for the smart home solution. Basically, they need some kind of user interface, admin interface. And typically, when we read about some huge scale security hacks, um, at the bottom line, what's happened is someone was using the default admin password. And using default admin passwords, it's not an issue related to Internet of Things by itself. That basically means that the hardware vendor or the firmware vendor have done very poor job by providing easy to guess default passwords without a mechanism to changing them. So this is not something that is related to IoT, but because in Internet of Things we've got multiple devices, the consequences of this type of mistakes are way more severe, and this is something that we need to remember about it. Um, the Going further, our devices are deployed in a number of different locations. Typically, those are very far away locations, and uh, our devices needs to send data they gather using sensors to some kind of backend system, typically cloud. And this data often goes through the public internet. And we need to ensure that no one can intercept this data, no one can tamper this data. And this is doable, right? This is perfectly doable, but we need to implement proper security mechanisms in place. And this is yet another challenge when we work with distributed environment like Internet of Things. Speaking about backends, Internet of Things typically leverage some kind of cloud backend. And security of a cloud is once again a huge topic of its own. It is not that easy to design and implement secure cloud backend. And for Internet of Things, the secure cloud backend is one of multiple pieces that we need to ensure that is secure and won't expose any endpoints, any private data that lives in our system. So when we work with Internet of Things, and let's say we are specialists regarding hardware and firmware, we need to find someone that can ensure that the cloud backend is secure as well, which adds yet another challenge to the whole situation. Speaking about devices, um, especially for the consumer Internet of Things deployment, are accessible for the end users, and we have no control over those devices and end users. So potentially, attacker could leverage the IoT device as the entry point to our system to extract some data to impact the way that our backend system or other devices behave. And we need to be prepared for that. We need to have proper mechanisms in place that can detect if someone is doing some things not that are not allowed to the IoT device and is trying to make some kind of changes or send some messages from that device to impact our system. Finally, probably the biggest threat to any IT deployment are humans, right? The human factor is huge cause of major security incidents. And as you probably know, like the well-known hackers typically use the humans as the entry point to the system. And the same is true for IoT. And in the Internet of Things, we've got actually multiple types of users. We've got the end users of our devices. We've got the administrators. All of those can be used as the entry point. Okay, so What about gains? Because I basically was talking about all of the issues that security i- of Internet of Things and how that should be mitigated. So the major overlooked feature of Internet of Things is that it could be used to counter threats, and those are the cybersecurity gains that we can have from deploying Internet of Things systems. So let's start with the real-time awareness, because real-time awareness, this is the main value proposition of the Internet of Things as such. Right? The devices use sensors to gather data and send that data to the backend system. This is called the telemetry, the remote measure. And um, once we've got the awareness, we can actually do something about the situation. So we can leverage data gathered from our devices, from the network, from the sensors, to ensure that our system is secure, and to create various models that can, in automated way, verify if the whole system is secure or maybe something wrong is happening. And once we've got that awareness, we can implement automated responses. So our system can be smart enough to detect that something is wrong, and it can take some automated measures to mitigate that threat. So this is a huge opportunity, not only for the Internet of Things system as such, but for the whole business process for the end users, like the owners of some facilities, right? Those users can leverage the real-time awareness, automated responses to increase the security posture. Going further, we should implement the zero trust architecture. And what does it mean? That means that the trust is not assumed. Like every single actor in our IoT system, both the device, application, and the end user, needs to prove their identity. And once they prove their identity, we can check the IoT policy that defines allowed resources and allowed actions for those specific actors. And this is extremely important because if we implement the zero trust approach properly, attackers can leverage their device to try to compromise a system, but they will fail because they will try to invoke some actions from their device that the device is not allowed to be executing. And there is nothing the attacker can do from the device perspective because the backend is the place that actually verifies the permission. So that's very, very important, that even though we expose number of ways to interact with our system, both from the applications and devices, we validate the policies on the backend, and hopefully backend is secure enough. So in case of any attacks, those can be easily detected and mitigated. Um, Speaking about authentication, I believe that the huge potential of using the Internet of Things technologies is the context-aware authentication. So what does it mean? That basically means that some device, some user, even application can have dynamic permissions depending on the overall context. So for instance, if some technician needs to go on the site for some maintenance tasks, we can grant that permission specific access depending on their location. So we could use, for instance, smart cameras to confirm that this specific person is in this building, and only for the time that person is physically in that building, we can leverage privileges of that person to invoke the maintenance tasks. And once this technician is out of the building, they won't be able to execute those tasks anymore. It is a huge, huge potential, in my opinion. And to be honest, I saw very little of actual implementations of this approach, which is, in my opinion, is a huge, huge shame. Finally, this is more like the end-to-end use case. So the supply chain security. Supply chains are pretty diverse, right? But what IoT can introduce is not only to verify the security posture of the goods during the manufacturing stage, and then when we move those products from one place to the other, we can monitor the conditions of our goods, and we can ensure that no one tampered with those goods at any stage of the production process, which is a huge gain once again. And this is the real value proposition of the Internet of Things technologies uh, for the end users. So I've got 30 seconds left. Let me very briefly summarize. So, Internet of Things introduce security challenges. That's a fact because it is very diverse um, concept that introduce multiple layers like cloud, network, and devices. But at the same time, it introduce gains that are very unique when you actually join all of those concepts into single working system. So that's all for me today. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Łukasz Majnowski, the Internet of Things advisor and trainer. Bye bye.